Between 1900 and 1930, you could see a baby in an incubator, get zapped by a clown, ride a loop that gave you whiplash, and then cheer while a horse dove headfirst into a pool. This wasn't a dystopia. It was a day at the park. Fairs, gardens, and the original weirdos. Before roller coasters and fried Oreos, amusement came in the form of jugglers and hedges. Yeah. The earliest version of a theme park was a mashup of three things: medieval fairs, royal pleasure gardens, and pure human boredom. Start with medieval Europe. Traveling fairs popped up in city squares. They had tightrope walkers, fire breathers, puppet shows, and clowns. Lots of clowns. And not the friendly kind. These were greasy guys in bells who juggled pig bladders and insulted the crowd for fun. Then came the 17th century pleasure gardens, like Vauxhall Gardens in London. Think fancy paths, string quartets, overpriced food, and dim lighting, perfect for 1700s flirting. Entry fees kept out the poor, but inside? It was a weird mix of opera, acrobatics, and guys watching women walk by in corsets. Total thrill ride. And don't forget freak shows. Yup, they were already a thing. The wealthy loved to pay for a peek at curiosities. People with disabilities were paraded like attractions. That wasn't entertainment. It was exploitation in a powdered wig. But the biggest shift came in 1851 with the first World's Fair in London. Held inside the Crystal Palace, this giant event had over 100,000 exhibits from around the world. People saw early elevators, odd machines, and entire villages recreated as displays. It was where entertainment met tech and got way too ambitious. These fairs evolved into full-blown midways, and with them came the seeds of amusement parks. By the time Paris hosted the 1889 fair, they had something insane: the Eiffel Tower. People thought it would fall over. It didn't. But it did set the stage for bigger, bolder public attractions. So before there were rides, there were gardens. Before thrill seekers, there were powdered aristocrats sipping wine near a flute player while a man in a lion costume danced in the bushes. Strange? Sure, but it worked. By the late 1800s, those ideas would collide, explode, and somehow give us fire-diving horses and death-trap coasters. But for now, amusement was polite, mildly terrifying, and just getting started. The Ferris wheel changes everything. Let's talk about the moment everything snapped into place, literally. The year was 1893, and the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago was about to outshine every fair that came before it. The French had built the Eiffel Tower for their 1889 fair, and America? America wanted to top it. Naturally, the solution was to build a gigantic rotating death circle. Enter George Washington Gale Ferris Jr., a bridge engineer with a screw loose and a dream. He pitched a ride that was 264 feet tall, weighed 2.2 million pounds, and spun 36 passenger cars, each holding up to 60 people. That's over 2,000 humans spinning in the air. People called him insane. They also called him brilliant. The Ferris wheel debuted on June 21, 1893, and it was an instant legend. It creaked, it groaned, it swayed in the wind, and people loved it. This wasn't some noble stroll through the gardens. This was up, down, and dizzy in full public view. The crowd lined up for hours. It cost 50 cents, about $16 today. Still packed. And that wasn't all. The Midway Plaisance, the entertainment zone of the fair, had a moving sidewalk, belly dancers, sideshow acts, and fake villages from other countries, some wildly inaccurate and borderline offensive, even by 1890 standards. But the Ferris wheel? That was the star. It showed that people didn't just want to see things. They wanted to feel their stomachs drop. Other inventors took notes. Some got inspired. Some got delusional. The fair raked in 27 million visits over 6 months. Theme park history books officially call it the moment thrill rides became a thing. Ferris proved you could charge people money to risk their lives for fun. And it didn't stop there. The design got copied, downsized, and slapped onto every fair and midway in the country. The original Ferris wheel was torn down in 1906. But the ripple effect? Permanent. Coasters, fun houses, and entire parks were now on the table. In short, the 1893 Chicago World's Fair didn't just introduce a ride, it introduced a mindset. Bigger, bolder, scarier. Forget pleasure gardens and puppet shows. America had found its new favorite thrill. Barely controlled chaos in mechanical form. Coney Island becomes America's playground. If you were alive in 1900 and wanted to see the future, you didn't go to Washington, you went to Coney Island. Just outside New York City, this stretch of sand turned into the loudest, brightest, weirdest amusement hotspot on Earth. And it all started with a sea lion. In 1895, Paul Boynton opened Sea Lion Park, the first enclosed amusement park in America. It had rides, an entrance fee, and actual sea lions. People had never seen anything like it. A year later, Boynton added a water chute that dropped boats down a ramp and into a pool. Crowds went nuts. Rides could be fast, wet, scary. Who knew? But then came the guy who changed the game, George C. Tillieu. In 1897, he opened Steeplechase Park, a place built around one brilliant gimmick: competitive wooden horse racing. Couples rode side by side on mechanical horses, holding on for dear life and sometimes for each other. The whole thing screamed barely disguised public flirting, and that was the point. Then came Luna Park in 1903, built by Frederick Thompson and Elmer "Skip" Dundee. These guys knew spectacle. Luna wasn't just rides, it was a glowing electric fever dream. The whole place lit up with over 250,000 lights, which in 1903 felt like time travel. People stared at it like it was magic. And finally, Dreamland, opened in 1904 by real estate mogul William H. Reynolds. This was the classy one, or at least it tried to be. It had lagoons, marble statues, and educational exhibits. But don't be fooled. This is the same park that would later host a ride through hell and a literal baby exhibit. We'll get there. Between these three parks, Coney Island became the epicenter of American thrill culture. Each park fought to outdo the others. More lights, crazier rides, bigger crowds. On a good weekend, the island could draw up to 1 million people. And nobody cared about safety. That wasn't the draw. The draw was chaos. Coney Island was where you went to eat too much, scream your lungs out, maybe get electrocuted by a clown, and feel alive. The gloves were off. And the rides? They were about to get really dangerous. DIY ride designers and death machines. Back in the early 1900s, if you had a mustache, a wrench, and a half-baked idea for a ride, congratulations, you were now an amusement park engineer. Safety codes? Not invented yet. Structural limits? A vibe at best. Ride design was basically open mic night for mad inventors. And nowhere was that chaos more alive than Coney Island. Take Luna Park's scenic spiral wheel, 1917 to 1921. Imagine a 70-foot wide spinning top, tilted on an angle, with 3,200 feet of roller coaster track wrapped around it. The whole structure moved as the trains ran. The public reaction? Meh. Not enough people threw up, apparently. But don't worry, Dreamland had worse ideas. Like the Leapfrog Railway, a coaster where one train literally climbed over another mid-ride. Sounds safe, right? Spoiler, it wasn't. Or the Whirlfly, which mashed together a roller coaster and a Ferris wheel in a combination no sane person ever asked for. Then there was the Cannon Coaster, a ride designed to make the train jump a gap in the track. Yes, like an action movie stunt. Early tests used sandbags. Most of them crashed. So the engineers just filled in the gap and pretended the whole jumping train idea never happened. But that was the vibe back then. If it looked cool, screw physics. Some parks didn't even hire engineers. They just built rides with whoever was around. If the structure held together, it opened. If it didn't, well, you probably didn't hear about it because the newspapers rarely blamed the ride. Even more shocking, most rides had no seatbelts, no lap bars, and zero restraints. Riders were expected to hold on and enjoy. Gravity was the only safety system. And if gravity failed, oops. In those years, the goal wasn't comfort, it was headlines. Bigger, faster, weirder. No one was building for longevity. They were building to scare people into buying another ticket. The phrase, "we'll test it live," wasn't just a joke, it was the business model. Hellgate, and the fire that ate Dreamland. On the night of May 27, 1911, Dreamland became a bonfire with ticket booths. It all started with an attraction called Hellgate, a cheerful little boat ride through scenes of fire, brimstone, and eternal damnation. Because nothing says family fun like demon puppets and lakes of sulfur. That night, workers were doing some late repairs. Someone knocked over a lantern. It hit a patch of canvas scenery, and within minutes, flames were everywhere. Dreamland was a fire trap waiting to happen. The buildings were mostly wood. The decorations? Fabric and paint, both flammable. The park had no sprinklers, no fire alarms, no plan. By sunrise, Dreamland was gone. Not damaged, gone. Over 22 acres torched to the ground in less than 6 hours. The fire moved so fast, people barely had time to rescue the animals. Some escaped, others didn't. The park's elephant, named Topsy, reportedly panicked and broke loose. One account says she swam out to sea. Another says she didn't make it. The truth is murky, but the panic was real. The only thing that survived the fire? A single ride, the giant coaster. Everything else? Ashes and warped metal. The official damage estimate was around $1.5 million. That's over $45 million today. Insurance covered almost none of it. Dreamland's owner, William H. Reynolds, had sunk everything into the park. He had no backup plan, No rebuild, no comeback. What makes this even darker is that Dreamland prided itself on being the classy amusement park. It had white buildings, classical sculptures, and educational exhibits like premature babies in incubators. It thought it was above the chaos of Luna and Steeplechase. Turns out, fire doesn't care about your brand image. The fire also destroyed public trust in park safety, at least for a minute. People started asking questions about exits, about materials, about why it only took one lantern to erase an empire of entertainment. But Coney Island wasn't done. Steeplechase and Luna kept going, and new parks were still on the rise. Dreamland just became the cautionary tale. Hellgate promised a trip through fire, and that night, it delivered. Looping coasters and real body counts. The first looping coaster in America wasn't thrilling. It was a whiplash simulator with a death wish. Meet the Flip Flap Railway, opened at Sea Lion Park in 1895. It had a perfectly circular loop, which sounds fine until you realize that shape puts 12 Gs of force on the rider. For context, modern coasters cap out at around 5.5 Gs. Flip Flap's passengers didn't scream, they passed out. Some got neck injuries, most just never rode it again. It was gone by 1902. Lesson learned? Not quite. Enter the Crystal Beach Cyclone, built in 1927 on the Canadian side of Lake Erie. Designed by Harry G. Traver, a man who clearly hated spines, this coaster was all twists, drops, and 84km/h turns. No straight lines, just punishment. It was brutal. People blacked out, threw up, some broke ribs. One rider died in 1938, a 22-year-old man who stood up mid-ride to take off his jacket and got tossed. They said it was his fault. But let's be honest, if your ride ejects people for moving their arms, maybe it's not rider error. The Cyclone's reputation was so rough that a nurse was reportedly stationed at the exit to treat the injured. Some say that's a myth, others swear they saw her. Either way, the legend stuck. Meanwhile, engineers were still pushing loop designs. The issue? Physics didn't care about style. Perfect circles were out. Engineers like John A. Miller realized that teardrop-shaped loops gave smoother forces. He also invented two devices that saved lives: the safety ratchet to stop rollback and the upstop wheel to keep cars from flying off the track. Revolutionary stuff that designers immediately used to build wilder rides. Because that's how it worked. Solve one danger, unlock a new one. Coasters weren't getting safer, they were just getting better at being terrifying. By the 1930s, every major park wanted a ride that looked like it wanted to kill you. Steep drops, tight curves, riders barely hanging on. It was entertainment by threat. And people lined up for it. Brakemen, no restraints, and chaos in motion. Early roller coasters weren't just unsafe, they were crowdsourced experiments in survival. Let's start with the basics. No seatbelts, no lap bars, no overhead restraints. Riders were expected to sit down, stay put, and hope gravity did the rest. One popular design, the Scenic Railway, ran on a simple formula: lift hill, slow descent, and curves that looked safe until someone added passengers. These coasters used free-rolling cars, which meant their speed depended on how much weight was in them. A full train? You were flying? A light one? You barely moved. Science was guessing. To fix this, some railways added brakemen, actual humans who rode along and manually operated a brake lever during the ride. Their job? Don't let the train fly off the track. Except the job was done blind, at high speed, while also trying not to die. One mistake, and the car derailed. Yes, this actually happened.
Oh no.
If that sounds nuts, some parks went one better. They let passengers operate the brakes. That's like giving a chainsaw to a toddler and calling it a learning experience. People slammed brakes too early, too late, or not at all. Cars would crash into each other or go careening off the track. There were also no standardized speeds. A scenic railway at one park might coast along gently. Another might whip around a corner so fast you lost your hat in two memories. The only way to know? Ride it and find out. Add in weather, rain, wind, heat, and things got even messier. Wood swelled, metal warped, no one recalibrated. Riders were flung sideways, jolted up, or slammed into each other. Whiplash and bruises were souvenirs. And yet, the danger didn't scare people off, it sold tickets. Photos of terrified riders were great marketing. Fear meant fun, and if someone got hurt, blame the rider. That was the unspoken rule. This era didn't just lack safety features, it lacked the concept of safety. Thrill meant risk, and if something went wrong, that was part of the charm. Baby incubators and racist carnival games. Some early amusement park attractions weren't thrilling, fun, or even trying to be. They were just deeply messed up, and people paid money to see them. Start with the baby incubators. Yes, real premature babies in glass boxes. Dr. Martin Cooney ran these displays at Coney Island's Dreamland and other fairs across the U.S. The babies were born too early to survive without constant care, and hospitals at the time wouldn't treat them because they thought it was a waste of resources. So County built a sideshow. Nurses fed and monitored the infants while crowds filed through, gawking. Admission? 25 cents. It was technically a medical service, and County did save thousands of lives, but also, it was right next to the rides. People could go from hot dogs to incubators to a plunge ride in under 5 minutes. And the disturbing exhibits didn't stop there. One hit attraction was the Lilliputian Village, a fake town populated by little people hired to live and work there, while guests stared and pointed. It ran for years at Luna Park. Parkgoers treated it like a zoo. It wasn't entertainment. It was exploitation with a decorative fence. Then there was the African Dodger. No, really, that was the name. White guests paid to throw baseballs at the heads of black men who had to dodge them. The goal was to hit their face for a prize. This game existed at fairs across America and was still around in some places into the 1940s. It wasn't hidden, it was advertised. Animal cruelty was also routine. Horses were trained to jump off platforms into pools, like a living dive show. They didn't enjoy it. Some were injured, some didn't survive, but the crowd clapped anyway. These attractions weren't rare. They were standard. Parks promoted them in newspapers. They showed up in postcards. Nobody batted an eye because cruelty, racism, and voyeurism sold tickets. Flirting, clowns, and public humiliation. If early rides didn't kill you, they might just grope you, not metaphorically, physically. Amusement parks in the early 1900s weren't just for thrills. They were where the rules of polite society got accidentally suspended. Take Steeplechase Park's namesake ride, the Steeplechase Horse Race. Guests straddled wooden horses bolted to metal tracks and raced in pairs, usually men and women, through winding courses. No restraints and barriers. Only full-body contact and a whole lot of grabbing whatever you could to stay on. It was one of the few public places where unmarried couples could get that close without scandal. And then it got weird. After the ride, you didn't just exit like a normal human. You had to pass through the blowhole theater, where holes in the floor blasted gusts of air upward. Women's skirts flew, crowds cheered, cameras flashed. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, clowns. Yes, actual clowns with electric cattle prods would zap male riders while they stumbled through the corridor. Why? Because humiliation was part of the experience. It was like being attacked by horny wind and sadistic circus rejects, and it sold tickets. The surrounding pavilion of fun kept the momentum going with slides, rotating floors, spinning barrels, and shaky walkways. Basically obstacle courses designed to force strangers to grab onto each other. It was marketed as innocent fun. It was not. None of this was subtle. Parks leaned into it. Advertising promised laughter, mild shocks, and the chance to see a woman blush. In an era where showing ankles was still spicy, a theme park became the loophole. And yes, people loved it, especially teens. Couples would ride over and over, just for the excuse to touch. Chaperones couldn't keep up. Morality groups protested. Parks laughed and kept building more. It wasn't about romance. It was about plausible deniability. You weren't flirting, you were just holding on for safety. You weren't looking up skirts. It was wind. Everyone played along. The Great Depression ends the Golden Age. By the early 1930s, the party was over. The stock market had crashed, banks collapsed, people lost jobs, homes, and savings. Disposable income? Gone. And with it, the crowds that once packed amusement parks every weekend. Coney Island, the loud, glowing heart of it all, started to fade. Attendance plummeted. Dreamland was already ashes by 1911. Now Luna Park and Steeplechase began to struggle too. Maintenance got expensive, rides got old. Without regular cash flow, things broke and stayed broken. Smaller parks fared even worse. The mom-and-pop operations that once popped up in every town couldn't survive. No one was lining up for hand-cranked coasters anymore. By the end of the 1930s, hundreds of amusement parks had closed, many without a trace. Some turned into parking lots, others just rotted. The innovation stopped too. Why build new rides when no one could afford to ride them? The thrill arms race froze in place. Designs went stale. Safety improvements stalled. And with the rise of movies and radio, people could chase entertainment without leaving home or risking whiplash. It wasn't just the economy. World War II hit, and steel got redirected to tanks and ships, not roller coasters. Labor was scarce. Parks didn't stand a chance. By the time the war ended, America had changed. In the 1950s, a few parks tried to hold on. Some adapted by turning into local swimming spots or picnic areas. Others leaned into nostalgia. But the era of reckless invention was finished. The rides became tamer. the crowds more cautious. Then in 1955, something new appeared: Disneyland. Clean, safe, sanitized. It was everything Coney Island wasn't, and it exploded in popularity. Suddenly, rides had rules, uniforms, maps. Theme parks were no longer wild experiments. They were corporations. The golden age was officially dead. What came before was chaos, risk, and straight-up madness. A time when you could ride a train off a track, flirt under a clown's electric baton, and pay to watch babies in glass boxes. And now? Steel coasters run smooth, seat belts click, no cattle prods in sight. But for a few decades, fun was loud, lawless, and flammable. And people absolutely loved it.